Good morning, all, and I would like to call this meeting to order and welcome everyone here today, all members of council that are in attendance both in person and virtually. Welcome to our staff who will provide us facts and information so we can make decisions in the best interests of our 6,000 residents of ACW and the corporation of ACW. Welcome to all, as I said, members of the public and that are in attendance and joining us, the media that are with us this morning. At the outset, I would like to acknowledge that it is with heavy hearts that we offer our sincere condolences on behalf of ACW Council to Councillor Anita Snoblin in the passing of her husband, Mike. Mike very respectively and eloquently spoke at our council meeting less than 2 months ago. And on behalf of ACW Council, we want Councillor Snoblin to know that she is in our thoughts and our prayers, and all of her family at this very difficult time. I would also like to indicate that meetings of council are live streamed on the township's official website in accordance with the live streaming and virtual participation of meetings policy. By attending this meeting, attendees and participants are consenting to their image, voice, and comments being recorded and available for public viewing on the township's website. Do any members of council have a pecuniary interest or general nature thereof to indicate at this time of any agenda item that we have today? Thank you for that. We do have the council meeting minutes of May 21st for approval, and I would entertain a mover and a seconder for the adoption of these, and that would be Deputy Mayor Vanstone and Councillor Hickey, that Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh Township Council hereby adopts the May 21st, 2024 council meeting minutes as written. Are there any questions on these minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? And that is carried. Thank you. Open forum is an opportunity for any members of the public to comment on any agenda item that we have today. Comments will be entertained up to 5 minutes in length, and I would entertain anyone that would like to make any comments at this time. I recognize, please go to the microphone, and you'll be next, sir, and indicate your name and the agenda item and your comments, please.
Good morning. My name is Paul Bollinger. I like to talk about 9.2. the customer service. I like to know who are the customer. We are all member from that corporation. We pay taxes here. We are citizen here. We are not customers. We are people. We generate a lot of income with property taxes to the municipality. So that's the benefit for other people they can consume. And I like to ask council today to give that bylaw, if you need the bylaw so badly, another name. Get away from this customer name. I hate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Please come to the microphone and introduce yourself and your agenda item, please.
Good morning. My name is Anita Frayne, and I would like to speak to item 9.2 on the agenda. Just a couple of comments regarding the proposed bylaw. Under Schedules A and B of the bylaw, would council please consider changing all references to customer in the bylaw to member of the public or resident/visitor? The term customer suggests that residents and visitors can potentially take their business elsewhere if they choose to. That's not the case when it comes to paying taxes, applying for severances or minor variances, or involvement in other municipal obligations or services provided by the municipality. Under Schedule B, Item 2, for clarification purposes, would council please flesh out what and define what it is meant by generally difficult customers? Under Schedule B, application and B, applications and restrictions, would council please flesh out what other actions as deemed appropriate would be, and how these actions could impact a member of the public's ability to fulfill municipal obligations and receive municipal services? Under Schedule C, would council please consider changing all references to customer to a member of the public or resident visitor for the same reasons as just mentioned for Schedules A and B. Would council also please consider changing all references to complaint to concern and all references to complainant to member of the public or resident visitor? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Please come to the microphone, sir. Indicate your name, agenda item you'd like to address.
Well, good morning. My name is Dennis, and I'd just like to you all to know I'm a creation of God Almighty. Okay, I don't think that's funny, sir. This chamber is a creation of man. Okay, man takes orders, or sorry, the corporation takes orders from man, not vice versa. And
Which agenda item, sir?
I'll get into that in a moment.
Please.
What 9.2, the customer complaints department or whatever. So I wonder if anybody here knows that that flag flying outside there with the multicolors on it is something that you see on the march to communism. Is anybody
Point of
aware of
order,
that?
sir. That's not on the agenda, Mr. Mayor.
Well, it's right on the front lawn.
Would you
And-
care to speak to 9.2, please?
Yes, so as I alluded to, I'm a creation of God Almighty. This council is a creation of man, and that's the way the proper order of authority goes. God, angels, man creates corporation answers to man. And could I suggest that if council or staff are concerned about complaints, maybe they ought to strive to do better. When I work in the private sector, if I don't do well, I get fired. And I don't question the boss's edicts. If I don't like them, I leave and go to another job. That's the way it is in real life. So I'm not sure what kind of a world we're living in here, but it's obviously not the private sector. So keep that in mind when you're, maybe I could do better and I wouldn't get a complaint, because that's what's happened in the private sector. I don't know if you all have jobs. I don't know if you all work at all, but that's the way it is in the private sector. So, and respect is earned, not just freely given. Have a good morning.
Thank you. Is there any other members of the public who would care to make any comments this time? Yeah, please go to the microphone, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. We're good? Okay, thank you very much. With that, I would like to move on to 5. I'm sorry? Oh, sir, yes, I thought I recognized your hand. Please go to the microphone and indicate your name and the agenda item, please.
This is the first time in about 15 years that I've appeared before this council. Ben Van Diepenbeek was the reeve at that time. I'm very unfamiliar with the procedures.
Your name, sir?
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Frank Gardner. Port Albert.
And your agenda item that you'd like to address?
I think it's the OPP, whatever item that is.
That'd be 9.3, would that be correct?
Yeah, I appreciate any help you can give me.
No worries.
I'm unfamiliar with your format here.
Okay.
Okay?
Please continue.
My wife and I and our family, our roots are Port Albert. We've been paying taxes to ACW for maybe 30 years. And I'm here and would appreciate if you would just circulate this one for each. Just pass it around. I'd like you to keep it on file. My hobby, my cottage hobby, I grew up in Godrich. My parents are buried at Port Albert, and I live in Toronto, but I'm spending more and more time back in Port Albert. I want to compliment you on the beauty of ACW and whatever. The item that I'm speaking about is OPP, and at the bottom of that page that you have there is the officer I'd ask you to contact. In the past, we had our grandchildren up for Victoria Day weekend at the cottage, which is a tradition. And in that past 7 days, I have been exposed to 6 OPP officers that have come in, 3 of them with their car and their uniform and their guns in their holsters, because of a neighbor and harassment on our northern boundary. I am only asking the enforcement people here not to be used for petty situations, and I'm asking the same thing of the OPP. I take it very seriously, my reputation, my family reputation. I do not want my grandchildren exposed to foul language from our neighbor to the north, and I don't want to have anyone exposed to threats or any kind of bullying. I'm here to relax and write, as you see in this particular newsletter. Let me tell you about the newsletter just for a second. Eugene McGee was a friend of mine. He passed away in the last year. He was the guy that did the history of the World War II British officers that came into Port Albert and then went back to fight Hitler. My dad was with the Royal Canadian Air Force, flight lieutenant. And I take veterans very seriously. And we're approaching June the 6th, where 60,000 Canadians landed on the beach in Juneau. And I have an obligation to veterans to speak up. And I haven't been here in a long time. I have to speak up because of the abuse of this situation with the OPP officers. They were very professional. And the number one thing I'm asking this council is to send someone out to look at the northwest corner of Melbourne and Huron Street North. Our address is 23 Huron Street North. And this whole incident involved about the new situation of garbage pickup. And I want to compliment the ACW garbage guys because they've done a good job. Because for all the years I've been coming to Port Albert, I didn't know the routine. I used to take my bag of garbage, pay $5 to Mark at the Port Albert Inn, and there was a dumpster at the back. That's changed dramatically now, and we now have to put it out on the driveway. And it's a procedure that applies to everyone equally. So I'm going along with that. But when I went out to put out my garbage, I got into a skirmish with my next door neighbor who seems to think he owns the township road, which my family, my dad, and subsequently me, have been maintaining. We don't own it. We've cut it. We've clipped the hedge. We've done everything. And this guy comes in and he just plants flowers and starts an altercation with me. And then he phones the police. Phoning the police on something like this is like ratting on your brother. And I just find it unacceptable. And I intend to write about it.
Could you wrap it up in 30 seconds?
I'm sorry? Sure.
Wrap it up in 30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds, okay. I would like this ACW to look into the garbage thing. I'd like you to look into honoring with the Order of Ontario Eugene McGee for the work he has done and the history and the writings he's done about the Royal Air Force in Port Albert. Thank you, and I would appreciate, as a taxpayer, to be next time, if I ever come here, to be shown where the coffee machine is. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Is there any other comments by any other members of the public that they would like to make at this time on any agenda item? And seeing none, I thank you for that. And I would like to welcome Patrick Huber-Hidby to present to us today, if you would please, Patrick, on the changes to the Conservation Act under 5.1. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Mayor McNeil. Thank you once again for making the time for me and so soon. I would like to bring a couple of updates to you this morning. The first being today's agenda item and follow up to some correspondence sent, I think, about 2 months ago to Council and all our member municipalities, indeed. And so as of April 1st, the Conservation Authorities Act was amended, and Ontario Regulation 164, which the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority previously operated under, was revoked. All 36 conservation authorities across Ontario now utilize Ontario Regulation 4124. And I've come specifically to speak about those changes as they relate to hazardous lands, including the shoreline. And in really brief, I won't take up too much of your time this morning, but there's a general change through these both the regulation and the act, they've both been kind of amended in tandem. There's a move away from certain environmental restrictions and a role in environmental considerations and natural heritage that historically conservation authorities have had. Simultaneously, there has been a doubling down on restrictions to new and expanded development within hazard lands. The amended act includes tests that are quite broad and strong in terms of limiting the possibility, even as a might be, in terms of potentially having any new development person's property at risk. We have sought some clarification on that from the Ministry of Natural Resources, who are the provincial leads on natural hazards. We've not received responses as of yet. We are taking some further steps in seeing if Conservation Ontario has encountered particular legal opinions on this section of the Act, and that we'll be seeking our own. But this is all to say that there are, at this point, some significant restrictions likely to be seen compared to how we previously dealt with regulations on the shoreline. We're working towards some clarification on that, but this will come about and is timed, fortunately, with the ACW zoning update to look at lakeshore residential development. But this is sort of where we're at, seeking clarification. But at this point, looking like there's significant restrictions on new development and expanding existing development compared to what used to be there. The other update I'd like to bring this morning, I'll hesitate to call it news, but an update. We continue to be extremely optimistic about a couple of federal funding applications we've put in. I'm hoping to speak to you again in maybe as soon as a month to see some federal funding announcements there formally. At this point, I have every expectation that Maitland Valley will be named within those announcements. And I wanted to thank Council again for their support in helping us make those applications. The local support we have is tremendous, and we do detail it in these applications to the federal government, these climate resiliency programs, and it makes a lot of difference. It makes us hugely appealing as a recipient of this funding to see that local support, both in terms of what Council has previously said and dollars committed. So thank you once again for that. I'd be happy to take any questions now.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And the first question or comment from Council will be from Deputy Mayor Vanstone, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. The restrictions and the setbacks that are going to be in place that are more, is that just along the lakeshore, or will that be in flood zone as well, floodplain?
It includes the floodplain as well.
It does include the floodplain.
Yes,
so anything along our Maitland Valley, or like our Maitland River, will be included in that?
Yes, there is a lot less development within the flooding and river valley hazards as far as ACW goes, but yes, that is included. So it's within the general scope of hazard lands. So that's the shoreline, river valley, floodplains. Within wetland features as well, it's typically a non-issue, but the buffers around certain wetland features have been reduced to a uniform 30 meters. That's one of the changes. It's not particularly expected to be a really noted change for anyone in ACW, but there's sort of a slew of changes. The changes around the circumstances under which development is permitted in hazard lands are expected to be the most significant.
Okay, thank you. And will this be retroactive, or when does it come into effect?
So it came into effect April 1st. It was announced just after Family Day there, and it was sort of, here's the new legislation, full stop. We received no transition guidance. There were a few sort of active permits in the works. The best advice we've received from Conservation Ontario is to work with those policies that were in effect at the time with sort of a legal fair dealings argument, but all new applications as of April 1st, it's under this this new legislation, most certainly. The previous regulation we had, 16406, has no legal effect as of April 1st, 2024. So no legal effect any longer.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. Any further questions or comments? Patrick? If not, thank you very much, Patrick, for presenting to us this morning. We appreciate it and the great work that you do on our behalf.
Thank you once again for your time and for your tremendous support. I can't understate how valuable it is.
Yeah. Collaboration. Thank you very much. We have nothing under Treasury Planning or Building today, so we will move to 9.1, which is the short-term rentals survey results. And the first I would like to do is compliment staff on the great work that they did in getting this out. The responses were tremendous, and that's what we want. That's the purpose of this. So now I will open it up for discussion on the results of the survey, and I'll go first to Councillor Miltenberg, please.
First of all, I'll echo you on the results, and thanks so much for putting them in percentages. I just love that. Some highlights in percentages. Over half of the short-term rentals that responded started in the last 3 to 5 years. And I'm just going to read what I thought was interesting, and then I'll cobble it together. 30% don't want regulations. 45% think they should be inspected. Like that's adding degrees of things, right? A third of people think we should limit the weeks. 24% want no action. 44% want education. And 55% are in form of some kind of restrictions and licensing. So I think probably we have a multi-tiered step, particularly if we think that, 24% don't want any action, but 45% started, or over half actually started in the last 3 to 5 years. They might be the ones in the camp that don't want us to do anything. There was a point made before the meeting starting about where could we look at where they all happened, but I'm guessing a lot of them were along the lake. And I think that we need to do kind of a multi-pronged approach. I think immediately we need some form of education. And I'm a director of a charity that runs a short-term rental. We black out, the high holidays or, party weekends, not really holidays. And we black out the winter, and we try to manage it. But I know that we don't post the bylaws in there. It never even occurred to me until I saw the question. But I think it's an excellent idea that people know what the restrictions are. And to make sure that people do that, I would think you would need to at least license them, like whether it's a cheap, like a dog license, just let us know that you're there and you need to post this, and we will update you on new bylaws and regulations. But I think that's an initial first step, and I suspect we need to do more. And I would like maybe a staff report on, like I know if we do more, it's going to cost. But how much is it going to cost? Is it going to be revenue neutral? What would it take to be revenue neutral? There's a lot of questions in the long term, but I think we've got a pretty clear indication here that short term we need to get started on something.
Okay, thank you for that. And if I could just weigh in a comment, the thing that struck me most in this report is the need for education. And that's very reasonable. And I think that's a good starting point. We need more education. That's what the survey said, and I respect that 100%. Other comments from Council? Deputy Mayor, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In reading this, I was quite taken aback by a lot of it. But anyways, I didn't realize we had that many rentals, if you wanted to know, in our municipality. But I still think it has to get back to the owner, because these are as a profit, okay? So we shouldn't, as taxpayers and as council of ACW, we should not pay anything to enhance his business. So that, I think, falls onto them. Whether it's a cost, it's passed on to the homeowner who is making the money. But again, if there's charges laid or anything else, I still think it should go to the owner. The onus should be on the owner of these properties, and he or she should be educating the people who stay there. So they should have a list of say, okay, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. And if you go outside these lines, there'll be an extra charge. And so that's my input. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that observation. I concur 100%. The owner is responsible. You're not, this is for council discussion, sir. So I would suggest that you're absolutely correct when you say that the owners are responsible and we need to take that into consideration. Further questions or comments? Councillor Hickey, please.
I agree with those comments so far, but the one that caught mine was out of the 747 that replied to the survey, the question of, have you ever made a formal complaint about short-term rental? I believe it was 10% said yes and 90% said no. I know there was a little explanation in it from staff. Is there any more follow-up from staff on that, and what bylaw maybe could do more without proceeding with more rules?
A really good question and comment. I'd like to get to it. You know, is the way to approach this with a staff report, we have the analysis, we have the information. Could we ask staff for a report back on this? And that could be included in that report. Would that make sense, Councillor Hickey?
Yeah, it would make sense. Just see, like we already have our officer and we're paying him. How many of these complaints could go through that officer without putting more rules in place for other people to be affected?
Oh, great comment. I see Councillor Forstner, and then I'll go to Councillor Miltenberg, please.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. When I was reading this report, the thing that caught my eye was like, are they, so like the drinking water, there'd be all private wells, and I want to know if that's monitored, plus the fire detectors and all these homes. I imagine that has to be done, but I'd like to know more on that. Okay, thanks.
Thanks for that comment. That could be included in the staff report. Councillor Miltenberg, please.
Yeah, I had two things, and I remember one. Just speaking as experience, two things. I remember the second thing. It's great. It's about the bylaws. Number one, with our charitable short-term rental, they tend to call the people who they know run it, which is nice because, you know, if there's a problem and it's a local, you can call them. The problem beyond that is if you don't know the owner or it's just a standalone that's for rental, you can't call and say, hey, somebody's messing up your house. You know what I mean? And the second thing is, before we strengthen the bylaws for tree cutting down, and like the fines were quite low. So people were quite happy to just cut the trees and say, oh, well, slap me with the bylaw, right? So if you're going to say the bylaw infraction is going to control this, then the fines better be a lot higher than they are now, because it's far more profitable to rent it out and pay the fine once in a while, right? So those are my comments. Thank you.
No, that's a great comment, and that's very easily done to increase the level of fines, and I would have absolutely no problem with that, because I would suggest that in this situation, the vast majority work within the rules. Just like in a basket of apples, there are some that don't, and those are the ones that need to pay. Councillor Miltenberg would like a follow-up, and then I'll go to Deputy Mayor.
I would concur with you in the big picture. My concern is that over half of these have started in the last 3 to 5 years, and that's when a lot of complaints started. So either it's education or some bad apples arrived, I don't know, but that we now have an issue.
Totally, and you know, COVID happened in that time. This is just one of the fallouts of that. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think the reason that there is more now is because there are a lot more rentals than there ever used to be, and people are finding they take advantage of it. But I'm quite in favor of a staff report on this, but I'd like to know who, I'd like to send an email to whoever's doing it with my concerns so that they can be addressed, and I think I would encourage all council to do the same thing. So who do I send it to? You, the clerk, or CAO? Who do I send it to?
Sorry, it would be me, but I would like to, from this meeting, I would like to have some direction on what you would like to have included in this report. I mean, the survey results are very inclusive. So I would like to, I can certainly narrow down on some issues, but I would like some specifics. If it's okay to do it, maybe, if you have some ideas afterwards, great, but I would like to flesh them out today. Please.
Totally, I concur with that. Councillor Miltenberg, please.
And it may have been in the report, and I apologize if I missed it. There's a lot, 700 some, right? How many are, like, do we know how many there are? Or what was our return rate that we were expecting? Like, how good is this survey?
Yeah,
So
refer
do you
to our
mean-
clerk, please.
Sorry, do you mean how many responses we got to the survey?
Yeah, so a good return, a good survey result is about 20%, right? So if we're talking 700 some out of, say, are we talking 5,600?
Something in there.
But maybe two people lived in the same house, for example. I know my husband didn't do it. We just talked about it and I did it type thing. So as a staff, were you happy with the return rate? And is there any way to find out if that 700 number is a low, medium, high? Like, do we suspect there's more that didn't reply, or?
Well, yes, there would be definitely some that definitely didn't reply. I think in scoping out survey options with other municipalities, this number far exceeded what I expected to have returned. I thought maybe, originally 400 or 500, maybe on the positive end. I don't think, the only time that we get more of a response is during the election. So I think, for a scope of an issue that is not during election time, I think we've got a fantastic response.
Yeah, I'd concur with that. I think that when we look at the areas where we have STRs, we had a great response, and that's what we wanted. There will be someone we need to respect in our municipality that it doesn't affect because of the proximity of where they live, or I would suggest we had a tremendous response for those that can be affected by this situation. When we talk about a staff report and staff needs clear direction, I think something that would be beneficial for council to consider was the education component. What would that look like? What would be the vehicle, that sort of thing, to educate? Who would it be targeted to? And we have a percentage that are very concerned, a percentage that it doesn't affect, and some in the middle. And we need to move forward and address this. We're not going to drop it, and we have to address it appropriately. When we talk about enforcement, I will use that word, and who should pay for that? And that would be beneficial, because I know our staff have access to other municipalities that have encountered this situation. What is the staff requirement of that? If we had to hire staff, what would that look like? How many? There's a cost. Who pays? Those are items that would be beneficial for council. Councillor Miltenberg, please.
Yeah, and I'm not sure this is possible, but we had spoken about it earlier, thanks to a comment from the crowd. If we can find out, or even if we know, anecdotally, I would expect that even though we're saying it's township-wide, a vast majority would have come along the lake shore, since that, I would think, is where most of our Airbnbs are, our short-term rentals, are concentrated. Would it be beneficial, and this would be in the staff report, not expecting to do it, should we poll that area then? Say, okay, we've really got a great response from this area. Now let's actually ask that area, since they are the ones who are affected by it. Like I would have answered a poll about a road in West Wawanosh for the chance to win a Yeti, but it doesn't really concern me as a private citizen, right? Because I don't drive over there that much. So maybe we should give more consideration to the people who are actually dealing with it all the time. We've looked big picture. Maybe we need to narrow our scope a little. And what would that look like or cost? Thank you.
Great suggestion. Deputy Mayor, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as I said earlier, I think we should look into the fact that the owner is responsible for all of this. And I'll just use one of my instances. We rented a cottage quite a ways up north, and when we went into the cottage, there was a form that we were given and had to sign saying that, okay, we could not have fireworks, we could not do this, we could not do this, we could do this. And like, we have a bylaw saying that there's only certain times they can have fireworks, and I know of a couple places, and it's in Port Albert, that every weekend a new renter goes in, and a renter would like to fire off some fireworks. And so if that's the owner is responsible for that, and then there's a call, then he's going to get a charge, plus he will charge the person who did it. And I think that domino effect will really ease our pain. So that's my concerns, Mrs. Clerk.
Yeah, and that's something good to include in the staff report, and probably something else is the level of our fines. Are they appropriate? Should they be changed? because the owner is responsible, and it is only, I would suggest, a small number that are not acting appropriately, and those are the ones that need to be responsible. Additionally, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just one more question, or comment, I guess you would say, is that I have talked to people who own a cottage, and their children go there, really close friends rent it and whatnot, and that's the ones that are really leery of this, okay? So, but I don't think there's any difference. If there's rules, then the rules should apply to everyone, but that's probably why some didn't answer, because they didn't want to jeopardize the fact that they wanted to rent to their kids or their grandkids. So thank you.
Okay, those are some of the parameters around a staff report. Our staff, Deputy Mayor, please. Or I'm sorry, Councillor Miltenberg.
Yeah, one last thing. A few of the comments in there talked about the strain on the roads and the septic systems. And I think that's valid, whether it's your renting it or you're renting it out to your 27 grandchildren. Like that, the septic system originally was not designed for that. And to me, that sounds like a valid comment, but how valid is that comment? I guess could we kind of look at that? I know some of these roads are private roads, so then that's an issue with not really the township, but some of them are unassumed roads. I don't know which ones are which. I think, Tom, you're working on a report, but how does that affect it, right? Because we do have a lot more traffic on roads that we're responsible for, right? So, anyway, thank you.
Absolutely, and the septic system is something that could be brought into it in that staff report. Absolutely. Anything additional the council would like staff to consider and bring back a report to us on this? Seeing none, I will ask for a show of hands if we are in support of a staff report for this. And that is supported by council. Is staff good with that? Okay, perfect. Thank you. 9.2 is the customer service standards. It is for consideration for adoption in Section 18. I will suggest with the comments we heard at open forum, would it be appropriate for to send this back to our staff to reconsider the wording of this? Councillor Miltenberg, please.
I'm going to go with no. I love words, and when words change meanings, it really annoys me. For example, people said irregardless so many times for regardless that now irregardless means regardless. It's accepted in the dictionary, so I have had to accept it, but I don't like it. So based on the comments in open forum, I did a quick Google search. And I'm also a big fan of dictionaries. So Canada's dictionary is actually the Oxford Dictionary. American is Webster. The best one in the world is supposedly the Cambridge. So I looked up Cambridge and Oxford, and they both say exactly the same thing. Customer is a person or organization that buys goods or services from a store or business. So the customers in here do use services, even if they don't pay property taxes. They have garbage pickup, they have police, they have fire. That's just to name the top three. So they are customers. Now, Oxford goes on to a second definition, and Cambridge did not, but it says, a person or thing of a specified kind that one has to deal with. That means the people who walk through the door are customers. By both the Oxford and the Cambridge Dictionary, they're customers. And there is a perception that a customer means you get to choose to buy things, but that's not what the dictionary says. So for me, until the dictionary changes the meaning of the word customer is correct. And I know I've spent my whole life going, why are you arguing over a word? But I'm a real fan of them. There was also comments and B and C, and that we should flesh out the greater punishments. And I'm really hoping that we never reach those. So I don't think we need to flesh them out at all until the time arises, and then it could be brought back forth if it's necessary. But at this point, I think this is generic overview with the Oxford and Cambridge definition of customer. So I'm happy with it.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't go by either the Oxford or the other. I go by the Ben Miller Dictionary. And it would like to see ratepayer instead of customer, because these are ratepayers. These are people who live in this community. They come to us because this is where their tax dollars go. this is where they have to deal, and they may be customers as well, but I honestly do believe, when I read it, that was what I would like to see, is that it become, instead of a customer, that the ratepayers of ACW come forward and deal with the staff. The other one I had in there was that if there's a real problem, it goes from the first person to, say, the clerk, and then to the CAO, and then the CAO will talk to the mayor. I think this should come back to council. This, once it gets that far, it should come back to council, and then council knows what's going on, and it will be done in camera, so it's not like it's out there, we're blackballing anybody, you know. So anyways, that was my two concerns. I would like to see customer change to ratepayers, and the thing put in there that once it gets so far, it comes back to council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Hickey, please.
I agree with those comments from Bill, and I like your idea at the start, Mr. Mayor, about it going back to staff for to check over the wording. I agree with the customer word and the complaint word. I would like to see those reviewed. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Miltenberg, please.
The problem I have with the word ratepayer is that it doesn't encompass all the people who come in the door. What if they're renters? What if they're visitors? They're not ratepayers. It doesn't encompass everyone.
Okay, yep.
And if they are ratepayers, they are, or if they are customers and renters, then they are renting from a ratepayer. And so I think it runs down the chain. But anyways, that's with my comments. Thank you.
No problem. Any additional comments? Councillor Miltenberg for the last one.
Sorry, I'm still on the word. If you don't want to get rid of customer, fine, but I don't like ratepayer either. I like the suggestion member of the public, because that could be anybody, right? But it can't be ratepayer, because that excludes people that might walk through the door.
Okay, fair enough. So, yeah, so the way we're going to handle this is I voiced a sentiment to send it back to staff to bring further consideration to come back to council on this. However, we are going to vote by a show of hands if we're going to adopt this as printed in Section 18 as a bylaw. All in favor of considering this in the bylaw? Opposed? So it will go back to staff for a further report. Okay?
Yep.
Consideration. Thank you for that. 9.3 is the Huron County OPP Detachment Board. The information on that has been circulated. Do we have any questions or comments on that? It is for information purposes. If not, 9.4 is the Lucknow Recreation appointing the summer students. Any comments on that? And if not, I would entertain a show of hands for the consideration of adopting this in Section 18 as a bylaw. And that is supported by council. I thank you. Nothing under water is indicated. Drainage Department, the Smith Municipal Drain 2024. The purpose of this is to appoint an engineer for this. It has been suggested that Stephen Brickman of Headway Engineering be appointed as the engineer, and further that a member of council be appointed as a municipal representative for this. So let's go to the latter first, and then we'll do it in one fell swoop. Councillor Miltenberg, please.
Yes, I'm aware that I have volunteered to do the next drain, but I'm fairly busy right now, so I'd rather not, even though I have volunteered in the past. And may I make the suggestion that perhaps you could do it, Mr. Mayor, if you're not too busy.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I would be happy to do that if that is the will of council. So I will entertain a mover and a seconder for this, and then I'll read the entire motion. Moved by Councillor Forster, seconded by Councillor Hickey, that Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh Township Council hereby appoints Stephen Brickman of Headway Engineering to make an examination of the area subject to the request submitted by Kathy Drennan at Concession 7, West Part Lot 18, Wawanosh, to improve the Smith Municipal Drain under Section 78 of the Drainage Act, and prepare a report for council's consideration, and further that Mayor McNeil be appointed as municipal representative for this project. All in favor of the motion as read? And that is carried. Thank you. Under Public Works, we have the Public Works Activity Report. It is again for information purposes. Do we have any questions of Tom on this report? Seeing none, 12.2 is the Ashfield Street reconstruction tender. We have all reviewed the tenders that have been submitted. We have passed in the budget for this at 1.5 million. Unfortunately, the tender came in considerably less than that. Are there any questions on this before I would entertain a mover? Question, Councillor Blake, please.
Yes, thank you. Just looking for some clarification on a few points. So from what I'm looking at for the tender, is that the plan is to reconstruct Ashfield Street to the from the intersection of Wellington Street to the intersection of London. Is that correct?
I'll defer to our staff. Tom, please.
Yeah, that's correct. There was an item on Wellington on the south end where the residents would like the ditch eliminated. So that was requested, so I included that as a provisional item. And yeah, so that's...
Please, thank you for the response. Please continue, Councillor Blake.
Yes, thank you. So before voting on a tender, just so we clarify the costs and how they're going to be associated. So from what I understand and what I read in the master plan is that a percentage of the drainage costs as well as a flat fee will be applied to all assessed properties in the area of construction. So is that also correct?
Staff, please.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and a follow-up, Councillor Blake.
So why are not all property owners that live on Ashfield Street between Wellington and London being assessed and charged?
Okay, thanks for the question. Staff, please.
If you could elaborate on who's not being charged, we could go over it.
Yep, thank you for that. Councillor Blake, please.
Yeah, there's two properties in the Port Albert master plan. I actually have a screenshot here on my iPad. They are on the closest end to the intersection of London and Ashfield Street, and neither of them were under the assessment. Thank you.
People that are being assessed under the London Street drainage that was already completed were not assessed on the Ashfield Street drainage.
Thank you for that. Councillor Blake, please.
And obviously, like, with the rate of inflation and the cost of things nowadays, the amount back then, minuscule to what the amounts are now. I'm not sure if I'm comfortable passing a tender along for construction projects if not all the owners that are benefiting from it, and we're telling them that they are benefiting from it, are going to be assessed and charged the fees.
So, okay, I'm just struggling a little bit. We're discussing the tender, the acceptance of the tender or not. So do you have a further question on that?
That's correct, yeah. And I'm just saying, I don't think we should be comfortable issuing a tender and issuing the work if the people, if not every person on that road is being charged. And I'd like to see real reasoning behind the two properties at the end, one in particular, as to why they're not being charged.
Councillor Miltenberg, please.
If I'm not incorrect, that was addressed in the Port Albert master plan, which we're not actually discussing right now. That would be a further item. We're discussing a tender. Which tender are we, right? Or not?
So I'll defer to our clerk, please.
So if I'm not mistaken, the next part of part of the motion to accept the tender is to bring back the bylaw. So the bylaw will be the same in the same kind of structure as the one from Wellington Street, which will elaborate the cost of the project. It will outline the 50% drainage cost to those who are assessed in the Port Albert Servicing Master Plan. There will be a schedule that includes the specifics for this particular project, as well as a map. So quite frankly, I think the most appropriate time to decide on how that bill is going to get divvied up is at that time. Right now, we want to make sure that this project that we've budgeted, and that we have an accepted tender for is accepted and signed, and that we can get moving on it. So that's just from a procedural standpoint, that's how I recommend we move forward.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Blake.
So I'd just like to finish by saying I understand where the procedural standpoint comes from. I'm still not comfortable approving a tender to bring back a bylaw when not all of the residents on that street are being assessed and charged. And for people that know the area understand what I'm referring to. this concerns me.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Miltenberg and then Deputy Mayor, please.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to accept the tender.
Okay, moved by Councillor Miltenberg. Do we have a seconder for the acceptance of the tender? And that is Councillor Forrest. Further discussion, Deputy Mayor, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask so that when this is bringing back the bylaw, and so when the bylaw comes back, if we see that there's something wrong with these two places that haven't been assessed as of right now, then that could be corrected at that point in time?
Clerk, please.
We would ask our engineers to have a look at it to double check. You know, if you saw from this that it wasn't correct or that it wasn't right, I mean, we can obviously pause at that point.
And that's separate from this tender. This is about the tender.
Right. So then at that point in time was the time to ask that, not now. We're just accepting the tender, and then when that comes back, we will ask the engineers to look into that. And I thank you for that.
Okay. With that, we have a motion that has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? That Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh Council award the tender for the Ashfield Street reconstruction to Burnham Excavating Limited in the amount of $1,119,598.47 plus HST. And further, that council directs staff to prepare a bylaw to provide for the estimated levying of the capital costs of the project. All in favor of the motion is read. Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Committee reports. Do any members of council have any reports that they would like to share at this time? I'll go first to Councillor Hecky.
Thank you. I'll start with the Community Alliance. We had our meeting last week, one day. The food truck has started. The farmers market has taken a different approach, maybe the word, I don't know if that's the word or not, for this coming year. It's not going to be the same as it has been in the past. We've struggled with vendors. It's been said a lot, you can't have the vendors without the people, and the people don't come without the vendors. And we're just in that spot right now where we just can't get enough people out on a Friday night. The food truck is back for the year. It, to my knowledge, is going to be out throughout the summer, every Friday night. And then we are going to do some other things, small things, not consistent, but there is someone from the area that has a garden that once the garden produces, that she's going to have a stand set up further on in the summer, so it won't be early on and it won't be consistent, but it's going to be there. There are a few other people, other vendors that are going to come that are not produce or not baking, I believe, so there's other ones that are going to be there also. July 12th, there's we got 3 park benches, 2 in memorial in memory of Thelma, and 1 in for the Dawsons family. And July 12th, we're having an event at the park for those. The details are still not 100% yet for that event. Then there are going to be other special events throughout the summer. We got a grant through the Power Workers Union. Shout out to Rob Fleming. He was the one that brought it to our attention, and we applied for it. The Power Workers Union Bruce Site Equity Trust Disbursement. And we were lucky enough, I believe it was $2,000 that we got. So we're going to use that to bring in some musical acts and entertainment and some games on Friday night. Again, it won't be every Friday night, but certain ones throughout the year that we're going to have events at the park in Dungannon. So we're going to try a new route, and hopefully that works. I was also in part of the Economic Development Committee the same night, actually. And it was a full, almost 3-hour night meeting that night. We had Vicky Loss here. It was very interactive and lots of ideas that came through. We had an ice-breaking exercise at the start of what we thought was the issues facing employers in ACW and what action is a positive impact for the for ACW's economy. Then we also had an interactive game or whatever it was. There was posters throughout the room here, strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities. And we all had a chance to go around and put our ideas down for what we seen for those 4 titles. And it led to a lot of discussion and a lot more to come down the road. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that and the great work that you're doing with the Dungannon Park. Thank you. Councillor Miltenberg next, please.
Yeah, I have 2. I'll add on to Evans. I was at that ECDEV committee meeting, And one of the strengths and weaknesses, they're often similar, is youth retention and how do we engage them. And then Evan went off to his meeting, and I volunteer at Brookside. And as part of the research from the ECDEV the night before, I talked to the principal, and she's delighted with the initiative. They're going to have a meeting. It dovetails into something they're doing. And then Kelly, who was also there, knew that I was going to the school, so she said, hey, would they be interested in promoting Dungannon youth nights? There's 2 youth nights. So I gave that to the principal, and they're going to promote that at Brookside. So it's just the knowledge of everyone partnering together just makes it so much more powerful, right? And I mean, it was very timely, that meeting. And so it was the initial, then we're going to come back for an action plan, find some low-hanging fruit and engage. But the school's 100% in. They love the initiative, so it's going great places. The other committee meeting I had was the St. Helens. Their fish fry, of course, is June 8th. There were a few tickets left. I'm not sure if there still are. But I will say that at that meeting, they talked again about winning the Community Group of the Year as well as the Volunteer, and they're over the moon still to be recognized. Lila, who won the award for, what is it, Best Community or Community Volunteer of the Year, whatever it is. She waxed eloquent again and said that the value of that award is far more than any value of any work she put in. So the township has supplied a plaque with her picture, and I hope she doesn't watch the meetings. She's going to be surprised when she comes to volunteer for the fish fry to see her face on the wall. And I hope she's surprised. Lila, turn off the TV. And the group is also hanging up their award. They're making a spot for it so everyone knows, and just please them. And they were so thankful to be recognized. And I think that's a show that we're on the right track here with this initiative. The last thing that they were doing was a community volunteer or interested person had supplied a picture of the king. So they were putting up the picture of the king because that's the one that should be up. The official one has not been released yet, but they like this one so much because he's got Canadian war badges on. So anyway, they're very active and engaged and excited to be part of ACW. So, and you can check to see if you don't have your tickets for the fish fry yet. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks for that. That's on the 8th. Correct. Okay, any other committee reports? I did attend a few meetings that is applicable to ACW. One was an NWMO, Nuclear Waste Management Organization, meeting that involves ACW because of our proximity to that. There will be a vote of the public, a referendum that will be conducted in October, and they require a 50% participation of the residents and a 51% vote in favor to move forward with that. In the absence of a 50% attendance of voting participation, the Council of South Bruce will make a decision on that, and that will come down in October. They're in the process of communication with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation group on this also at this time. You had a question on that, Councillor Miltenberg?
Just the date, because several people have asked me, and I said I think it's in the fall, so it's October. Yeah.
It is. I don't have the specific date in my calendar, however, it is October for that date. I also attended the Huron County Food Bank Distribution Annual Meeting a week ago down at Crediton, and all of the volunteers do a tremendous job, and that group are able to attract a lot of food that is donated to them. They have made arrangements with some grocery stores that when food is becoming close to the best before date, that they provide it and immediately distribute it out. And all of volunteers do a tremendous job in that, and that is for throughout Huron County. I also attended an emergency management meeting in Blythe a week ago that encompassed Perth, Huron, Bruce, and Grey. And the emergency management purpose is that so that when, not if, but when an emergency occurs, be it a catastrophe, a flood, a fire, whatever, tornado, that those responsible are prepared to act. That is the intent, and it was a well-attended meeting, great discussion, and our residents expect that of us. I also attended a municipal meeting at the Wingham Listowel Hospital a week ago that discussed the healthcare situation and the challenges that are currently that all hospitals are experiencing. And I was asked to move some discussions forward with the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus that I have done a week ago in conjunction with the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus also. So when we have all of Ontario speaking to the government of this province in one singular voice, it certainly has more effect than just a municipality reaching out. So I represented ACW in those meetings. Anything else from anyone on that? If not, do we have any new business that anyone would like to bring up for a future meeting? Councillor Hickey, please.
Thank you. I had a phone call from Gerald Jefferson, and he has put a request in for a specific flag to be flown in the month of July in this township. And I would like to see that, since we go on a case by case, I would like to see that on the agenda for June the 18th, please.
Actually, I have had a discussion with Mr. Jefferson on that. And it was my understanding that that's been resolved.
Okay, he just talked to me this morning because it wasn't on the agenda, and he asked me to bring it up. So he asked if it would be discussed in council.
Okay, so that will be like that on a future agenda. Okay. CAO, please.
Just for clarification, what are we adding?
He sent a request in for a flag flying. Is that right?
No.
Okay, I'm under the understanding there's been a request for a flag flying in July of a specific flag, and he would like it to be brought to council.
No, there's been no formal request submitted.
Okay.
Maybe verbally, but no written request.
Okay.
And I addressed that with him.
Okay.
Councillor Blake, please.
Yes, I have two items under new business. The first, in recent months, I've been hearing more and more chatter about the medical isotope industry. And as council's aware, we've all received a number of emails from an ACW resident. And I happen to notice little to no interest in opening up too much discussion about that topic. So whether or not the medical isotope industry is a good fit for ACW, that's yet to be determined. However, I don't want to dismiss further discussions and investigation into this topic and its possible relationship with our township. I would like to ask staff to further look into the isotope industry and what opportunities could be had, if any, specifically but not limited to Bruce Power, and bring back a report for further discussion for council.
Okay, that would be for a future meeting. Okay. CAO, please.
Just to get a consensus of the council, please.
Is council in support of that? No, I think we have a question. Okay. Councillor Miltenberg, a question, please.
Well, Evan, we talked about that at the ECDEV committee, and Huron County is a member of whatever it is, but ACW can also be one, which we weren't aware of, so that recommendation is coming from the ECDEV department after our next department. I just gave myself a title, didn't I? Our ECDEV committee had talked about that as an opportunity. Because we know that Huron County is in discussions, as is the warden and the Western wardens and everyone, but apparently it can strengthen your position if your individual lower tier is as well. So that is coming forward, as long as it's approved at the next ECDEV committee meeting, which it sounded like it was going to be.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to defer to our clerk for comment, please.
So to that point, the medical isotope issue was talked about at the Economic Development Committee, and we're looking to include it as part of an action plan to bring forward to council for approval. And preemptively, the action is to become a member of that association that works with the medical isotopes and the business building of all of that. So it's, it's on its way.
Is that fair, Councillor Blake?
Is it fair to ask what kind of timeline we'd be looking at for that?
Well, sorry.
No, go ahead, staff, please.
We're probably going to meet in the next couple of weeks with the Economic Development Committee, and then I'm hoping in July we'll have that action plan to council.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that. And
Yep.
if I may move on to my
Yep,
second
follow up,
point.
yes, another one?
I would also like to request that staff contact IESO to see if it is possible to have a presentation, either virtual or in person, to update us on our rights and abilities as a township when it comes to the end of contract discussions regarding renewable energy projects. I can't speak for everyone in this room, but I can speak for myself that I am not updated and up to spec on what happens at the end of these renewable energy projects, and I would definitely like to be.
Okay, so that would be a matter for new business at a future meeting. CAO, please.
You'll get direction from council. if there is.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Question or comments, Council?
I'm just kind of confused about what you're asking for. Didn't we just have that with was it K1 who, it was the end of their project and then they have to go? Are we talking about a provincial matter that we're looking for more? Are you talking about the provinces thing that we don't have any control of that you want an update on? I'm confused.
No, fair enough. Good question. Councillor Blake, please.
Yeah, so for clarification, what are rights and abilities to as a township when it comes to the end of the project? What rights do we have with the land? What rights do we have when it comes to decision making? It's what's to be done with the land and when the project's when the contract is terminated. I just like education and some information brought back so we are all aware of that, because I'm not.
Fair enough. Okay. Follow up, Councillor Milton, please.
Well, I'm a big fan of education of all sorts, so I don't disagree that we could have education. I'm kind of confused about why we want it, but if somebody wants to be educated, I'm all for it.
Okay, so Councillor Forrester, please comment.
Hey, thanks, Glenn. I think I asked that question, what happens when this is all said and done? I'm pretty sure he said they get tore down. So I don't know if that resolves the problem.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Blake, please.
I would like the education and information to be brought forward from someone other than the actual participants in those companies, so that we see it from an outside source, someone that gets to dictate these regulations and pass down rights and abilities to the township.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so there's I'll ask for a show of hands if council is in support of this for an agenda item for a future meeting. And that is supported by council, okay? Any other, CEO, please?
So just for clarification, we're going to invite IESO representative to attend council to discuss this.
That would be my understanding, yes.
All right, thank you.
Perfect. Any additional items for future meeting? Seeing none, we have nothing for correspondence for direction, correspondence for information. We have 4 items listed. Is there anything that anyone would like to discuss on that? Seeing none, 17 is unfinished business. Councillor Miltenberg is registered for AMO. August 18 to 21, and Councillor Hickey is representing council at a Ontario Association of Sewage Industry Services Town Hall meeting on the 7th of June. Thank you for that. Councillor Miltenberg, please.
Yeah, so the clerk corresponded with me that she did send 2 requests to meet with the ministers about short-term rentals and aggregates, but we don't expect to hear until the 2nd week of August. And just being preemptive, if we get a yes, it probably would be after our next council meeting and before the one. So if we get a yes, what's the procedure of what I'm supposed to say? Would you like just to recirculate what the clerk could recirculate what we were going to say the last time and for comment through email, because it won't be at a meeting. The timing won't be at a meeting. So if we get it, we'll send out what we're going to say, and if you have any additional comments, is that the process there?
Clerk, would you confirm that, please?
Yes, that would be suitable.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Anything else on that? If not, I would like to move into bylaws, and we will not deal with 18.1. We'll deal with 18.2, and that is the appointment of summer students for Lucknow Recreation. It would be moved by Councillor Vanstone, seconded by Councillor Hickey. The leave be given to introduce bylaw number 35, 2024, being a bylaw to appoint summer student positions for the Lucknow and District Joint Recreation Board, and then it now be read severally a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 4th day of June, 2024. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. We do not have a closed session today. The confirmatory bylaw would be moved by Councillor Miltenberg, seconded by Councillor Forrester. The leave be given to introduce bylaw number 36-2024, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Township of Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh Council meeting held on June 4th, 2024, and then it now be read severally a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 4th day of June, 2024. All in favor of the motion? And that is carried. And the adjournment would be moved by Councillor Blake, seconded by Councillor Forrester, that Ashfield-Colborne-Wawanosh Township Council does now adjourn to meet again on June 18th, 2024 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the mayor. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. Thank you very much to all. Enjoy the rest of your day.